It's always your own people, sometimes it's your own people. This is Silicon Stink Kid, I'm Orchid. I'm coming with more shit than your average dork kid. If this is Mario Kart, dude, I'm Bowser. I'm coming highway, plus my word is much louder.
What's up, my wizards? Dev, SBNTG, down there with magic stuff on YouTube. I've got a deck tech for you today, and it's only going to cost you anywhere between $5 and $10 on TCG Player. I actually think this is one of the better budget decks that we've done in a while. This is Boros 1-drops. This is a take on a deck that actually did really well at SCG Open Baltimore. A lot of decks in that field ran a lot of, just mono-white base aggro shell, and then expanded on that by adding a color, and the deck that came in second place was just mono-white, straight up. So we're not playing that strategy entirely because it played, 2 and 3 drops and stuff. The Blue-White Humans deck that's reminiscent of this plays 5 drops. We don't have that luxury. We're going to try and spend as little money as possible on the deck. But we still have a very aggressive strategy that can win games pretty fast. Speaking of SCG Open Baltimore, I just want to thank Wizards of the Coast, which is mind-blowing. They put us on Wizards.com in the Stuff to Watch Today category for our coverage of SCG Open Baltimore. That was really cool, and I sound calm about it now, but I was literally freaking out. Thank you, Wizards. You guys are cool. And one more thing before we get into the deck. If you enjoy the content, like it. Just hit the thumbs up button. That's all I want you to do. Let's check this deck out. We're playing 28 1-drop creatures in the deck. That's a lot. And as a matter of fact, every non-land card in the deck, creature or not, is only the 1 mana. That's awesome. It allows us to play next to no lands, and as long as we have 2 mana out, we can do a bunch of stuff on our turns. That's cool. But 28 creatures, we want to play as many 1-drop guys that either have 2 power or can get 2 power as we possibly can. That lets us have 16 guys in this deck that are just the 1 mana but can either have 2 power or come into play with 2 power. So let's check those guys out right now. We're playing 4 copies of Village Messenger in the deck. We're playing 4 copies of Dragon Hunter, 4 copies of Expedition Envoy, and 4 copies of Town Gossipmonger. Village Messenger, you're not really worried about human synergy in this deck at all, so we don't care if it transforms and is no longer a human. We don't care. Just the fact that it can have 2 power is great, and the haste is actually pretty important. You can put this down after mass removal, let's say, and then put a couple of pump effects on it. You've got yourself 7 damage right there. So Village Messenger is good as a surprise sometimes too. Gossipmonger over there was proven to be pretty good at the SCG Open in Baltimore. A lot of people liking this card, and I can see why. We have a lot of creatures in the deck, so its ability to transform is easily fulfilled. And once it does transform, it gives us a decent mana sink. If we've drawn a bunch of lands we don't necessarily need, this is the mana sink we can pump everything into and make it bigger. This is technically like the biggest guy in the deck once he flips. So Gossipmonger is very important. Definitely play the playset of that. Dragon Hunter and Expedition Envoy are just 2 power guys, and Dragon Hunter has the advantage of being Ojutai proof. That's cool. Even the Bant Dragons deck has seen a little bit of play in this format. I saw it come in 5th place at, I think, an invitational qualifier. So, Bane Dragons, whatever. Also good against Silumgar, but mostly Ojutai is what we're worried about right now. And Dragon Hunter's good against him. But just having, 8 dudes that come into play 2 powered no matter what, very important.
I am best friends with Cooper Sephiroth and Dr. Wily, always smiley, but my thoughts are red just like my Ozzy.
Well, that's all the 2 power 1-drops. That leaves us with quite a few guys that don't have 2 power. Why play them? I'll explain. 4 copies of Thraben Inspector. Another thing that was proven to be pretty good at this last Open in Baltimore. A lot of decks playing this guy. The fact that he's just a 1 mana guy with 2 toughness, that can sometimes be important. But mostly the fact that he basically says, draw a card whenever you want to for 2 mana. That's great. With just 3 mana, we can draw a card and play any single card in the entire deck that we happen to draw. So that's pretty awesome right there. Helps us get a little refill. Is decent against mass removal too. It's at least resilient is all. So just the fact that this guy allows us to draw us a card whenever we want to, as long as we have the mana for it, into their turn, whatever, is really good. I think he definitely is worth playing, if only because he's a warm body and a drawn card. 4 copies of Topplegeist in the deck. Again, we don't have to worry about human synergy. We can just play whatever 1-drops that we want to. And Topplegeist is basically a spell. That when he enters the battlefield, tap a guy, can be really important, when we're just trying to get through some damage very early in the game, which is where we live. We want to get through all of our damage in the first, 4 or 5 turns if we possibly can. It's fairly hard to get the Delirium with this guy, but if you do, and it is possible at least, we have the option in the deck. But if you do, it's pretty great. Tapping down a dude every combat is great. But mostly the fact that he's evasive, that's awesome. We got a lot of pump spells in the deck, so having an evasive dude is really good. And the fact that when he comes down, he removes their biggest guy from combat for a turn, very important. 3 copies of Stern Constable in the deck. That looks kind of weird. Now, if you're playing any higher budget than this, you might want to cut Stern Constable for something bigger, like Thalia's Lieutenant would be a good call, you know. Either of the Lieutenants, Consuls or Thalia's. But since I'm just going with 1-drops here, I actually like that this allows us to enable Madness on Fiery Temper. I think it's important that we play Fiery Temper. We can often get it off for just the 1 mana, you know, if we've got a Stern Constable in play. Not only that, but we can tap one of their guys down, which I've already said is pretty important. We live in the first few turns, and if on, say, turn 3, you can take out one of their guys with a Fiery Temper and tap down another one of their other guys, that's a really good play for you. So, really have enjoyed Stern Constable so far. I don't know that I'd play the play set, although enabling the Madness is very important. But even if you're not enabling Madness, he allows you to, say, discard unwanted lands to tap down guys. That's actually pretty important, too. And the last creature I'm playing in the deck is just a silver bullet copy of Lightning Berserker. She's still in the format. It's like people have forgotten. She's in Dragons of Tarkir. We play this thing. And this is actually good against mass removal and sorcery speed removal. You know, Declaration in Stone was probably the #1 played removal piece over the weekend. And that's just not SCG Open Baltimore. That's the IQs, the super IQs that SCG put on. So this card was played, Declaration was played a lot. Over the weekend. Sorcery speed removal is really in the format. The Languish is played in the black-white deck, the black-white mid-range deck, and the black-white Eldrazi deck. People play it in the sideboard. So things like mass removal also pretty important in the format. Chandra, a very important card, to say the least. Radiant Flames is important. So this gets around all of that. And yeah, we're not playing all the mana or even all the red mana in the deck, you know. But still, this can help us recover from mass removal and get around sorcery speed removal. I really see no reason not to at least try and play the 1 copy of her. Before I move into the spells, let's talk about the enchantments we're running. We're running 3 Auras. All 3 of them are Gryff's Boon. Card did prove itself a little bit over the weekend. Turns out to be pretty darn good. Especially with like Thalia's Lieutenant and Cult Leader. You know, when you get through a huge one of those, it's really good. But in this deck, it gives a much needed buff to our dudes and allows them to fly. You know, all we need is for guys to get through for a few turns. This helps do that pretty well. And again, against things like mass removal or really just removal of any kind, this will fall into the graveyard. We can get it back later, which is super important because we're going to get a lot of our guys removed. Just remember that. You're going to get guys removed. I keep bringing up mass removal, and really the best advice I can give you when playing this deck, period, is to not overextend. If you know, don't overextend your board if you know that the deck you're playing against has Languish, Radiant Flames, Flaying Tendrils, Chandra, whatever. Just don't overextend. You know, you can play a little bit longer against those decks because they don't have as many viable threats to play against you. You know, you can hold back and just have like 2 pump spells in your hand and hit them all at one time when they can't do anything about it. There are definitely ways to beat controlling mid-range decks with this deck. You just have to be a really good aggro player. And this deck will teach you how to do that. Definitely, if you play it enough. Into the spells, we're playing 11 of them, and 7 of them are pump spells. We're playing 4 copies of Titan Strength in the deck, and 3 copies of Lithomancer's Focus. Titan Strength was a no-brainer. I would say it's definitely the best pump spell in the format. Allows us to not only make a dude huge for a turn, and you know, if he goes unblocked, that's at least 4 damage, if not 5 or 6. That we're getting through right there. But also, the Scry, always been important, is very important in this deck, allowing us to either scry away lands that we don't want, or scry into lands that maybe we do want. You know, either situation is very important. That Scry, don't forget it. A lot of people forget the Scry. Don't forget, the Scry is very important on Titan Strength. So that was a no-brainer inclusion. But I had a lot of options for the other pump spell. You know, I thought about Rush of Adrenaline because I really like the way it interacts with Titan Strength. You know, Titan Strength plus Rush of Adrenaline, and that gives the dude trample and at least 5 power. So that looked good. Same thing with Strength in Arms. Thought about Strength in Arms and maybe some 1 mana and even Bonesaw equipment. You know, 1 and 0 mana equipment. That idea ultimately I didn't really like, so I went with Lithomancer's Focus because I think that 1 mana for +2/+2 is a pretty good deal already. And there's just Eldrazi in this format. So, you know, it's something like this, we can say on any of our 2-power 1-drops, we can play this, block a Thought-Knot Seer, and kill it. And our guy survives, you know, that colorless clause. Actually pretty important on Lithomancer's Focus. It either allows us to get through for more damage or block a huge or big-ish Eldrazi guy and survive and kill it. So Lithomancer's Focus, pretty darn good, and I think it's the best pump spell we could play outside of Titan Strength. And to finish off the spells, 4 copies of Fiery Temper in the deck. As stated previously, this works well with Stern Constable, but over the course of the game, you'll probably get the 3 mana that you need to cast this, even without the Constable, so there's that too. But Fiery Temper is just obviously very, very good. It provides the deck a little bit of reach. Sometimes we get them down to like 5-6 life and we have to do something other than attack for the win. And just drawing into Fiery Tempers can often do it. Aggro decks have been winning like that for 20 years. So Fiery Temper is no different. Also allows us, obviously, to remove creatures, which can be really, really important in the mid-game mostly. We're just trying to blast through for that extra little bit of damage to win the game. And I want to point out, as far as we're talking about burn here, you could take out the Lithomancer's focus and just put in Fiery Impulse. That could also work. We're playing enough spells to make sure that we get the spell mastery on that most of the time. So you could go more removal if you wanted to, and I'll make an argument for that when we get to the board here. But I have liked the abundance of pump spells in the deck, just getting through as much damage as fast as possible. And I know I'm sort of breaking my rule here. This costs 3 mana naturally, but with the Stern Constable in play, this just costs the 1 mana, and that's how we're looking to play it anyway. Like I said before, being able to tap a guy down and kill a guy, extremely, really just fantastic play for this deck. Specifically, so a lot of times we're going to try and play this for just the 1 mana, but if you're forced to cast it for 3, it's still a fine spell. There's 18 lands in the deck. That's about as low as I'd be willing to go, like, ever. But 18 lands in the deck, and all you really need is 2 to operate off of. But you could play this, by the way. I played Evolving Wilds to help activate Delirium on the Topplegeist. That can happen. But at the same time, you could just play Stone Quarry in the deck if you wanted to as a 2-of. I can see doing that too. And the first upgrade you'd make to this deck is Battlefield Forge and maybe a couple copies of Needle Spires instead of the Evolving Wilds. That's absolutely the first upgrade. We need the mana as much as possible, but you can run off of this because all you need is 1 of each mana and you're fine. Here's the sideboard right here, and we're doing a couple of things in here. Not too much more than a couple of things, but a couple of pretty focused things. The first thing we want to accomplish is getting some help in the mirror match, These decks are fairly cheap to build. These mono-white base aggro decks that maybe add a color. These decks are fairly cheap to build in this format, and I think they're going to be fairly popular too, mostly for that reason, but also because they're fun, they're easy to play, So we're going to probably see a lot of these, even at just F&Ms, It's likely where we're going to see these. So the mirror match, I think, is going to be fairly important, and we're doing a lot to help with that. We're playing the dual shots, which are amazing, by the way, in this mirror match. They can 2-for-1 a lot. So dual shot is crazy, and I'm actually thinking about upping the copies of that. Rending Volley is in there against the same decks, and this helps against a Jutai too. So Rending Volley's been really good. And then Fiery Impulse, I put in the board of this deck, just against the mirror match, we are stacked. We've also got a Lightning Axe in there to help out with the madness if we need it on Fiery Temper, and to take out bigger creatures, which is a consideration. That's always a consideration. But I almost want Lightning Axe to be main deck. I just can't find room for it. Aside from that, we're getting some help against mass removal. That's the other thing we want to worry about. We're getting some help against mass and sorcery speed removal in the form of Skin Invasion and 2 more copies of Lightning Berserker. Lightning Berserker, I think, is that important against all the sorcery speed removal. I mean, not just to mention language, but all the sorcery speed removal in the format. Lightning Berserker is that good. And Skin Invasion is obviously crazy. I mean, it can become the biggest creature in our deck if they, have to sweep things with the language, or if they have to block something and kill it, So Skin Invasion can seriously be the biggest guy in the deck if they kill the wrong creature. So Skin Invasion's been great against things like sweepers. Here's the power rankings for you. A final score of 59, which is pretty good for one of these $5 or $10 budget decks. Usually they don't get, close to the 60s like that. This is pretty good power level. We can kill pretty quickly. And yeah, I would say that we're susceptible to sorcery and mass removal and stuff like that. But if you haven't noticed, I've said we can get around mass removal by doing this like 100 times in this video. So we're a little bit more resilient than it looks like we are. Hello, Ziggy. It's the whole gang's here. But in any case, we're a little bit more resilient than it looks like we are, but we still need a little bit of help in that category. So, but aside from that, these cards have proven to be a little bit more powerful than they look to be over the last weekend. So you get an extra bump in power level. We're extremely offensive. And the things that we do poorly, we don't care. We don't care because we're just trying to kill them as quickly as possible. That's all I've got for now, but tomorrow I'll bring you a severely upgraded sort of version of this deck when I bring you Blue-White Angels. A lot of people are calling that Blue-White Humans, but I'm pretty sure it's the Angels that do all the work in that deck, or at least that's who's doing all the work in the testing, at least. The deck has been really fantastic. It was either Mono-White Beats, we're calling it, or Blue-White Angels. I was working on sort of both of them because they're mostly the same deck, and one splashes of Jutai and Reflector Mage. That's really the only difference. So I'm probably going to bring you Blue-White Angels, Blue-White Humans. This That's what most people are excited about right now. So we're going to try that tomorrow, and then on to new business from there. I got to do Black-White Eldrazi soon, and that's a very important deck in the format at large right now. And I also want to do Blue-Black Zombies, which is something that a lot of people have asked for and didn't have a fair showing at Baltimore or any of the other invitational qualifiers over the weekend. People may be saving that deck for the Pro Tour, perhaps, or maybe it's just not that good. Maybe it's got a lot of ins and outs and different little things that people are trying to figure out and brewing it, and it's just not ready yet. Who knows? But I'll give you my version here soon. Let me know which of those decks, Black-White Eldrazi or Blue-Black Zombies, you want to see next. That's all I got for now. If you enjoyed the content, I'll tell you one more time, hit the thumbs up button. That takes no time. You can comment, let me know how you felt about this or any upcoming projects, what you want to see. Share if you think that it should be shared. And then subscribe if you're new. I know a lot of you are new lately. Go ahead, please sub. That would be super awesome. You'll get all my content, and then you'll be happy and I'll be happy, and we'll all be happy. I'm Dev from SBMTG. This is the Igby Monster, and we'll see you guys later. Thanks for watching, my wizards.
Cause I can bust you like a question mark block, like a kick at you, I'll treat you to the school of hard shocks. Sharp blades like imperial rage, burn hot, expose plots, cut holes in eye sockets.